The Interstellar Academy of Alaris Prime processed 200 cadets every cycle. It was a point of institutional pride, the finest minds, the strongest bodies, the most promising young soldiers from 47 recognized species gathered under one roof to be shaped into the officers of tomorrow. The scanning ceremony was always the first day of orientation. Always routine. Always boring. Professor Cale Veyron had conducted it exactly 412 times across his career. He could do it in his sleep, and some nights, he suspected he had. He stood at the head of the aptitude hall, a tall Velhari with pale violet skin, narrow obsidian eyes, and the sort of perfectly still posture that came from 30 years of military service. The scanning apparatus before him was a masterpiece of Union technology, a biometric column 2 meters tall, capable of reading bone density, neural architecture, pain thresholds, cardiovascular capacity, and a dozen other metrics simultaneously. In seconds, it would produce a profile. In those profiles, careers were made and broken. Veyron sipped his Kethroot tea. "Next," he said. One by one, the cadets stepped forward. A Pulhari from the gas belt colonies, exceptional lung capacity, 4 hearts. The scanner chimed green. Atmospheric specialist candidate. A Durrani twin form from the velvet reaches, distributed nervous system, immune to conventional shock. Green. Tactical infiltration. A Sorvian youngling barely out of its third molt, crystalline bone structure, reflexes measured in microseconds. Green. Close quarters combat. Veyron logged each result with the quiet efficiency of a man who had stopped being impressed roughly 300 cadets ago. He wasn't cruel about it, he genuinely cared about these young beings, but wonder required novelty, and nothing about this cycle had offered any. Until cadet number 199. She walked to the column with the unhurried step of someone who wasn't trying to impress anyone. Medium height for her species, which, Veyron noted without particular interest, was listed on his manifest as human, Sol 3. Brown hair pulled back with mechanical simplicity. Eyes the color of old amber, scanning the room not with nervousness but with what he could only describe as inventory. She wasn't looking at the ceremony. She was cataloging exits. Cadet Mara Ellison placed her palm on the scanner plate. The machine was silent for 3 full seconds. That had never happened before. Veyron looked up from his datapad. The column ran its scan. The column ran it again. A soft chime, not the usual clear confirmation tone, but the system's query sound, the one that meant I need to check this against a broader database. The column's optical ring pulsed twice, orange, then settled into a slow, rhythmic amber glow. Text began to build on Veyron's display. Species, human, Homo sapiens, Sol 3 origin. Homeworld classification, K-type terrestrial, 1.0 g surface gravity, 21% oxygen atmosphere, high UV exposure, high pathogen diversity, seasonal temperature variance of 80 degrees Celsius across latitudinal zones. Baseline cardiovascular output, 340% above Union average for comparable body mass. Bone density, 2.8x Pulhari equivalent. Cortisol response, active under continuous threat conditions for estimated 72+ hour periods before degraded performance. Healing factor, accelerated cellular regeneration, minor tissue damage self-corrects within hours, major damage within days. Pain response calibration, see note. Veyron frowned. He tapped the note. Note, subject species evolved on a world-designated Class 4 hostile by Union Survey Commission. Pain signals in this species appear to function as advisory rather than limiting. Subject neurological architecture does not force behavioral shutdown at pain threshold. Continued function through significant injury is documented and expected. Recommend recalibration of standard performance benchmarks before evaluation. He stared at that for a moment. Pain signals function as advisory rather than limiting. He read it again. He had taught at this academy for 11 years. He had processed cadets from 47 species. He had never once seen the scanner add a note. He scrolled further. Psychological profile. Threat response architecture includes extended planning under duress, pattern recognition optimized for hostile environment navigation, social bonding structure creates combat multiplier effect in group settings. Unit cohesion is significantly higher among human integrated teams under live-fire conditions. See Union Combat Studies Archive, Volume 14, Studies 3 through 91. Evolutionary note. This species survived a mass extinction event approximately 66 million years prior, and subsequently evolved on the planet that caused it. They did not leave. They adapted. Final classification. Veron leaned forward. He had to read the final line twice. Deathworld Human white heavy checkmark. The column's amber ring pulsed one final time, then went green, but it was a different green than the others. Deeper. Almost cautious. The hall was quiet. Most of the other cadets were murmuring among themselves, or studying their own result slips, or too young and inexperienced to understand what they were looking at. But the Sorvian cadet 3 rows back, the one with reflexes in microseconds, had gone perfectly, unnervingly still. It had seen the classification appear on the public display board. It had recognized the word. Mara Ellison removed her hand from the scanner and glanced at Veron. "Everything okay, Professor?" Her voice was conversational. Mild. The voice of someone asking if the tea was still warm. Veron realized he had been staring. "Yes," he said, with the careful neutrality of a man who had just recalibrated several assumptions. "Step to the side and wait for your assignment file." She nodded and moved, and he watched her go, and he noticed, perhaps for the first time, with the eyes of someone who had spent 30 years studying the movement of soldiers, that she walked like the room owed her nothing and she expected nothing from it. Not arrogance. Arrogance was performance. This was something older than performance. This was an organism that had grown up knowing that everything around it was trying to kill it, and had simply decided that wasn't going to be a problem. The assignment meeting was at end of day. Veron called Mara Ellison in last. She sat across the desk from him with her hands folded, which struck him as almost satirically calm given what her file said about her stress hormones. "You've reviewed your profile," he said. "I have. You understand the classification." She tilted her head slightly. "Deathworld Human." "Yes. It's in the xenobiology briefing they gave us before arrival. Earth is a class 4. I grew up knowing that." A pause. "We all do. It doesn't concern you?" Something moved in her amber eyes, not quite amusement, but its quieter cousin. "Should it? The scanner is just describing what I am. It's not a judgment." Veron studied her. In 3 decades of evaluating soldiers, he had developed a sense for fear, not the absence of it, because every sane being felt fear, but the relationship a being had with it. Some beings were paralyzed by it. Some suppressed it until it detonated. Some channeled it. Mara Ellison looked like someone who had made friends with fear long ago and now found it a useful travel companion rather than an unwanted guest. "The classification affects your placement options," he said. "Several specialized units will actively recruit from your profile. The 9th Shock Division. The Deep Incursion Cadre. Frontier Survey Corps." He paused. "These are not comfortable assignments." "I didn't come here to be comfortable, Professor." He looked at her a moment longer than professionally necessary. "No," he said. "I don't suppose you did." He filed the report that evening, in the quiet of his office with the station's artificial night cycle underway and the hum of recycled air the only sound. The final tally, 200 cadets processed. 199 filed without incident. 1 had triggered the supplemental database query. He wrote the summary in the dry, institutional language of a man who had learned long ago that feelings had no place in official documentation. But before he sealed the file, he paused. He thought about the note. They did not leave. They adapted. He thought about a young woman who read a room like she was looking for threat vectors and called it Tuesday. Who had come, voluntarily, to a military academy at the edge of explored space. Who had looked at the words Deathworld Human on a classification screen and asked, with total serenity, if everything was okay. He thought about the 47 species he had worked with. The crystalline-boned Sorvians with their millisecond reflexes. The four-hearted Pulhari who could breathe sulfur. The Durrani with their distributed nervous systems that could survive what would kill anything else. None of them had evolved on a world that tried, in every season, every biome, every water source and soil layer and atmospheric event, to end them. Only the humans had. And the humans had looked at that world, had looked at the predators and the parasites and the plagues and the tectonic violence and the sheer indifferent hostility of their own home, and had not only survived it. They had missed it when they left. Professor Kale Veyron sealed his report, finished his tea, and spent a quiet moment being grateful, for the first time in a long career, that humanity had decided to join the Union rather than the alternative. He did not let himself think too carefully about what the alternative would have looked like. He went to bed. 200 cadets scanned. One result worth remembering.